Hello, this is a message from MassDEP's Hydro team regarding the MassDEP FirstLight Water Quality Certification Public Involvement Timeline that you see on your screen. The purpose of this video is twofold. First, I will walk you through the timeline, discussing the significant milestones that you see. And then second, I'll respond to some recently asked questions pertaining to the timeline. If you have follow-up questions, I encourage you to review MassDEP's webpage devoted to this FirstLight Water Quality Certification proceeding. There is a good chance you will find your answer there. If you do not, please feel free to use the form on the webpage to submit a question. As you see from the timeline, on February 22, 2024, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, otherwise known as FERC, the acronym FERC, issued what's known as the Ready for Environmental Assessment Notice, also referred to as the REA. When FERC issued the REA, that also automatically triggered the running of the 60-day time period in which FirstLight must file its application for a water quality certification with MassDEP. That brings us to the next milestone, which is April 22nd, 2024. That is the last possible date for FirstLight to file the water quality certification application with MassDEP because it falls 60 days after FERC's REA was issued. Once the application is filed with MassDEP, it starts the running of the one-year time frame MassDEP has to issue the final water quality certification. The one-year time frame begins from when FirstLight actually files its water quality certification application. So, for example, if FirstLight files the application on April 22nd, 2024, then by April 22nd, 2025, as you see at the end of the timeline, MassDEP must issue the final water quality certification. It's important, however, to remember that at this time, MassDEP cannot indicate or provide specific dates for these milestones. They will be unknown until the application is actually filed and the one-year clock begins to run from that date. Once the one-year time frame begins running, there are several important dates to keep in mind. After the application is filed, the next significant event will be FirstLight's publication of public notice for a public hearing and public written comment period for MassDEP to receive oral and written comments on FirstLight's application. The manner of publication for the public notice is specified on MassDEP's FirstLight webpage. The public notice must be published within 10 days of the date on which FirstLight files its water quality certification application with MassDEP. This point on the timeline is represented by the May 2024 label, because if FirstLight files its application on, for example, April 22nd, the public notice will be published within the 10-day time period, likely at the beginning of May. The 35-day written comment period begins running as soon as the public notice is published by FirstLight. The public notice will also specify the day and times when MassDEP will hold 2 virtual public hearings on Zoom, one in the afternoon and one in the evening. MassDEP will also provide updates on its webpage for this project, indicating when public notice is issued, and email notifications will be provided to those who have signed up on the webpage for email updates. MassDEP intends to provide this email notification on the same day that the notice is published. The purpose of these public hearings is solely for MassDEP to receive public comments on the water quality certification application. As indicated on the timeline, the public hearing will be held during the written public comment period in May or early June 2024. The next point that you see on the timeline is identified as June 2024. As stated there, the deadline for written public comments to be submitted on the water quality certification application will be 35 days after public notice is published. The next point on the timeline is identified as September/October 2024. At some point during that period, MassDEP will host a hybrid public information and question and answer session on the water quality certification process. That public information session will be held in a hybrid format, meaning people can attend in person at a location to be determined, or they can participate virtually. Notice of the date and time and location for this public information session will be handled similarly as notice for the first public hearing, which I discussed previously, except that there will not be newspaper notice. The next point on the timeline is indicated at November/December 2024. During that time period, MassDEP will issue a draft of the water quality certification for public hearing and written comment. Notice will be provided in the same way as notice was provided for the first public hearing, which I discussed previously. Also, like the first public comment period, the comment period will begin running as soon as the notice is published. The public hearing date and time and written comment period will be specified in the public notice and on MassDEP's webpage. The hearings will occur at some point during the written comment period. The next point on the timeline is indicated by December, January 2025. That indicates that the public comment period will close at some point during that time, which again will be specified in the public notice. The comment period will be a minimum of 21 days from when the public notice is published. Last, you see on the timeline the April 22nd, 2025 mark. That indicates the deadline for MassDEP to issue the final water quality certification, assuming that the FirstLight application for the water quality certification is filed on April 22nd, 2024. As I discussed previously, MassDEP intends to provide notice of the above public notices on its FirstLight webpage on the dates that the notices are actually published. Email notification of this update on the webpage will be provided to people who sign up for updates. Now I'm going to move on to the second part of this presentation, which, as I discussed above, relates to questions concerning how the public can be involved in the water quality certification process. I will leave the timeline on your screen so that you can see it as I'm addressing the questions which pertain to the timeline. The first question is it still possible for DEP to hold an introductory information session, as had been the plan originally, even if it's before the 401 clock starts, to give people who are new to the process a sense of what the process will be like, how to engage, etc.? During the summer, we adjusted the schedule to include issuance of the draft certification and a public hearing and comment period to accommodate the strongly expressed desire from stakeholders for a public comment period and hearing on the draft water quality certification. We had previously, as this question notes, decided against doing that because of the very short time period in which a certification must be issued, and because it is not standard practice to issue draft certification for public comment in this context. Given this added public participation component and the additional time it will consume, we had to alter the schedule, resulting in the schedule that I just discussed and which is depicted on the timeline on your screen. As part of this decision, we also realized that we would not have much information to share at a public information session that followed shortly after the filing of the application, because we would not have time to digest the information and studies in the application. We expect that the application and supporting materials will be voluminous, maybe tens of thousands of pages. MassDEP needs time to digest the materials before a public information session can be held. The next question is this. There is appreciation for longer comment period at the beginning of the 401 process, 35 days instead of 21 days, and the public comment period planned after release of the draft 401 water quality certification. Will the 35-day comment period begin as of the submission date of the 401 application by FirstLight or as of the public notice posting date? Yes, the public comment period will begin when public notice is published within 10 days of the application being filed. MassDEP intends to update its website with that information when the notices are published and provide email notification to those who signed up for email notices of web page updates. The next question is, will FirstLight's 401 application be posted on MassDEP's website for the public to review? Yes, the application or a link to the application and supporting materials will be posted on DEP's webpage as soon as possible. This may take some time, given that the application and supporting materials are expected to include thousands of pages and many different documents. The next question is, related to the public information session, now scheduled 6 months into the review period, DEP's website says, quote, the public information session will be an opportunity for FirstLight and MassDEP to present preliminary information about the water quality certification, engage in dialogue, and answer questions from the public. What is the benefit to the public of holding a question and answer session at the point in time after the public comment period is over? The benefit of holding the information session when it is scheduled in September or October is that DEP will have had a chance to digest the application and supporting materials and public comments provided at the public hearing and during the written public comment period on the application. As a result, the information session will be much more informative than simply holding an information session shortly after the application is filed, which would not give MassDEP enough time to digest the application and supporting materials. Why is FirstLight being given the floor halfway into the process as part of the public information session? FirstLight is the project proponent. MassDEP is the permitting agency. These are very distinct and different roles. Therefore, there are certain aspects of the project that FirstLight, as the applicant, and not DEP, should more appropriately address. That is why FirstLight will be part of the public information session. The next question is, DEP hired a consultant to do a peer review of the erosion study. When will DEP make this peer review study public? The study will be released to the public when it is final, which is likely to be later this spring, 2024. The next question pertains to the importance of DEP doing an independent review for the certification. It states, during the settlement negotiations, Natural Heritage and the Division of Fish and Wildlife worked with each other. DEP did not participate in settlement discussions, wanting to remain unbiased for the 401 process. Natural Heritage and the Division of Fish and Wildlife negotiated a settlement as fit for their agencies. It is essential that DEP now do a thorough and independent 401 review that focuses on DEP's statutory obligations rather than deferring to its sister agencies. MassDEP agrees with this statement. MassDEP's role is to issue the water quality certification based upon its consideration of applicable law, science, and relevant information. We will take into consideration the expertise of our sister agencies and the reasoning and science behind the settlement agreements, but we are not bound by those settlement agreements. And finally, the last question is, early in the relicensing process, DEP stated that the agency will be coordinating with Vermont and New Hampshire agencies on the 401 water quality certification, given the connected river system and the shared impact across all 3 states on migratory fish species and other aquatic life, human fishing, access to recreation, etc. How and when will DEP be coordinating with these other states? It is not uncommon for state agencies to consult with other states on cross-border issues and environmental resources. DEP will consult with Vermont and New Hampshire as necessary. We have reached the end of this short presentation and hope that it was helpful. If you have questions or comments, please submit them through the form provided on MassDEP's FirstLight webpage.